Can we move on to the next? Okay. Moving on.
The last 3 points hopefully will be quite quick. The first one was the relationship behind the district plan rules that are outside the 4AVs and how they relate to the rules within the central city. And this has been raised by CJOB, by central government officials. There is some differences between what we're proposing outside the 4AVs and what we have inside the 4AVs. There's a number of reasons for that. Some of those obviously because what was put in the 4AVs was put in through the CCRP, so was put in through. There's not a specific page. What I'm trying to explain is what's an accessible city chapter and how it relates to what we have here. So there are some differences, mainly because the accessible city chapter is very much encouraging that within the 4AVs we have a slow vehicle environment. That's why some of the especially the streets in the middle we're looking at a 30k speed limit. We're also looking at obviously a pleasant pedestrian environment in the CBD. It's obviously the most accessible part of the city for public transport. That's where the public transport was all focused on. So there are some differences between what we can propose in the CBD and what's proposed outside the 4AVs, where it's not as accessible by public transport as it would be right in the core of the CBD, and where we've got some key arterial roads outside the 4AVs which we're not looking at reducing down to 30k like what Sarah are looking at doing within the CBD. So there is some subtle differences, but we have ensured that the two will work together and that we're not going to have a situation where what's being proposed in the CBD will have an adverse effect on the suburban areas and vice versa. We've tried to ensure that they are compatible, but we also need to recognise the unique environment that the new CBD will be in the CBD.
I would have thought that it would have incentivised the idea of 30k areas around some of the key activity centres. You know, some of the areas, like Riccarton Road is an obvious one, possibly. You know, Colombo, a few others. We're just slowing down the traffic just to get through those areas would make it a far more pleasant and less stressful environment for those on bikes or walking.
Something we can look at in the future, but I mean, there isn't a recovery plan for those key activity centres that says it must be 30k, so that's why there is some subtle differences between what we've got within the CBD.
Yeah, but we don't have to do what we're not directed to do, but it doesn't mean we ignore it because it might be a good idea somewhere. Yeah. It might actually be a good idea elsewhere as well.
Sure.
Yep. Carry on.
And the last 2 points were sort of issues raised by some residents, really around ensuring improved pedestrian and cycle safety and access, especially to commercial centres, and also concerned about volumes of traffic, especially heavy vehicles. So if I refer to page 22, and which is that integrated transport assessment process again, and these are the assessment matters. We've added in red checks assessment matter number 16 and number 17, which deals with those two issues, just to ensure that when these large developments come in and require integrated transport assessments, that we can ensure that they consider how pedestrians and cyclists can safely access these developments, and also we can assess whether they will create a increase in, especially in freight, on some residential streets, and we can assess whether that's appropriate or whether we should try and ensure that the freight uses more appropriate roads than going through residential areas. So we've made it quite clear that we can assess that, and once again, that's the best tool to assess those kind of issues. So that's what we're... Yep, so page 22.
So is that just really for future sites rather than... Can we not do anything within our district plan to improve the safety for cyclists in the areas that we already know are of high use?
So through the district plan, the district plan isn't retrospective.
Yeah, I know that.
We can only deal with new
We can
developments,
impose
right?
rules on ourselves, though.
Well, we can through the long-term plan. We can put in projects and put funding towards improving some of pedestrian and cycle safety in some of those areas, and the major cycle network that we're rolling out will do that to some extent.
No, I don't think you get my point. Is there nothing we can do in the district plan that would enable us to change, how some of these areas are sort of provided for at the moment? There's nothing we can do in the district plan to assist that process of making those areas safer for cyclists.
Can I just clarify? Are you talking about, say, for example, one of the suburban centre master plans, say Edgware Road? Are you talking about how we can potentially slow down traffic?
Possibly. That might be one of the reasons.
Right.
Because, one of the dreadful accidents that just keeps happening is people opening up their door and not seeing a cyclist coming behind them. And I know we should look, and the obligation is on the person to look. But when you've got that mixed use and you're much more likely to have parking on the side of the road on these busy streets when everyone is busy and flustered and trying to get in places, and people are travelling at speed nowadays. I never used to bike that fast in the olden days. We didn't have racing bikes back then. Oops, that old.
Through you, Madam, I think that perhaps the best way to deal with it is probably through the major cycleway program and the other work that council's doing in that space.
Yeah, but the major cycleway program isn't going to deal with every one of these centres. That's why I'm just...
No.
But it is the only way to deal with it, speed. And if that is the case, then speed is something that we could do in the district plan review.
No. Speed is generally, and we were just discussing that actually a few moments ago, speed is set by our operational people who are in charge of the asset network.
But the central city have got speed written into their
plan.
And that's a recovery plan.
That's a recovery
so
plan.
So we wouldn't
it's
normally
not a
see that
plan.
in a district plan.
So you're saying that we cannot put any speeds in the district plan?
No.
So nowhere in the country does a district plan have any speeds locked into...
That's correct. That's correct.
A district plan.
It's an operational matter, and the speed isn't always related to the road classification either.
No, I know. I know. We've tried to get Preston's Road changed for years, but we were late by a few months.
Yeah, and traffic calming measures too. They're also not necessarily part of a district plan in the sense that they're generally done through, we talked about suburban centre master plans, but also main road type improvements, that kind of thing.
But in making those decisions, they'd look at the road classification and say, well, what's the purpose of this road? Is it an arterial? Is it supposed to take through traffic? Well, we'd want to create a road which does that. If it's a local road, which is not for that through traffic purpose, then council might look at traffic calming measures or slowing it down.
What's Riccarton Road?
So the minor arterial road.
What's Montreal Street?
Well, that's in the central city.
Yes, I know, but what is it?
Outside of the central city, it's
It's a minor arterial outside, it's south of Morehouse Ave, but it's a
main distributor.
which is equivalent to a collector road within the CBD.
Is that because it slows down, or is that what it would be, regardless? What's Barbados Street?
Yeah, so all the roads within the 4 avenues are either collector roads or in the central city plan it's called distributors, but it's the same terminology.
And
or
they were
local roads.
And they were also. That's what they were before the central city.
No, they were changed, and that was once again through the recovery plan to encourage people to use the 4 avenues to go from one side of the city to the other, and to protect the central city for just people accessing the central city, and for a pleasant pedestrian environment and enjoying the Avon River precinct and those kind of things.
So why did they keep them one way?
That was a decision by Sarah again to.
But the proposal that we put in, that kept the one ways, didn't it?
No,
It just moved one of them.
We in the draft central city plan, we proposed to remove the one-ways
Of all of them?
of all of them,
Okay.
and Sarah decided to keep them.
Yeah.
Apart from Salisbury and
Kilmore.
Kilmore,
Yeah.
which we changed
Yeah.
to two ways.
And so tell me so what was it before it was a collector road?
So Barbados Street actually was a major arterial, but that was a hangover 20 years ago. Barbados Street actually, remember back those days, it used to be State Highway 1 because it was the key road through the country until we built the Johns Road, Russley Road.
So tell me, is Barbados Street isn't caught up in the 30k though, is it?
I'll just check that.
I think it's
It's not.
Madras is the only one.
Madras is
so what was
the edge of-
Madras before it was?
So that was also a major arterial because Barbados was the one-way south and
Yeah.
it was the one-way north. So that was the main through route through the country 20 years ago. So that was
City.
that's how far we've moved on in 20 years, and now we're trying to update the district plan.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's interesting because I just wonder whether we may need to maybe put this down on the list of things that maybe we'd like to be able to do in other parts of the city as well, as they have done in the central city. If they want some synergy between the central city plan and the rest of the plan, then maybe we could ask for it the other way round and give us the power to impose a lower speed limit through some of these areas.
Madam Chair, if I may, if it is technically possible to put a rule in a district plan that sets a speed limit, and that is an if, I'd like to have a look at it. Assuming for the
Well,
moment,
Central City Recovery Plan, just look at it.
yeah, but that wasn't under the RMA.
Yeah, I know.
We're under the RMA.
If we got a recovery plan from the Minister that enabled us to do it, or an order in council that enabled us to do it, we would be able to do it.
Yes.
Yeah, as they have done for the central city. They've asked us to look at whether we can create synergies between the CBD and the rest of the city plan. I'm just wondering whether that goes both ways.
And if that was to happen, there'd then be a rule in our city plan that sets a speed limit as a permitted activity.
Yeah,
And then breach of that speed limit by someone who sets the speed limits would require a resource consent. That's the kind of framework that you're talking about. So you're describing a process of setting a speed limit that applies only to one person, and that's the council, because it's the council that controls that road.
oh damn,
So,
okay.
So
All right,
yeah.
That was just a good idea.
So the council's the infrastructure.
okay, you won. Jimmy?
Just on that, Madam Chair, that 30k speed limit, that I think the whole intent is for the streets to be self-explaining. So, and what I mean by that is that they'll be redeveloped so people will want to slow down to 30 k's an hour when they come across into that zone. Hopefully we won't have big signs and flashing neon saying 30 k's. It'll more be narrowed streets and planting and traffic calming measures and those sorts of things that will encourage people to slow down to 30 k's an hour, because that's the speed they'll want to drive through there. And when we look at the kind of wider issues of appropriate speed zones throughout the city, that's the approach that the engineers take. It's kind of like if you've got a big wide street and it's long and straight, you wouldn't want to put a 30 or 40k zone on it because people will just naturally drive faster. And so it's really about designing the street so it explains the speed limit to people as they use it.
Yeah, but Rickenham Road isn't a long, straight, wide street.
No.
And when you get cars parked on either side and you've got buses pulled in and...
Yeah, and that might be an appropriate place for you to say, well, hey, that's something that the operations people could look at and go, well, maybe that zone should be less. Maybe that area should be 30 or 40 k's or whatever else, but we could do that outside the district plan review process.
All right,
We don't need a district plan to
I'm
do it.
totally giving up. Jimmy?
Question. You add the item 16 in the city plan in here regarding to the improved pedestrian and the cyclist safety issue in here. I'm wondering what's the relationship between this one and the annual plan or maybe the long-term plan. For instance, I take example, like Springs Road. It's kind of busy road, lot of trucks, heavy motor vehicle pass through. But intersection is Amy's Road, maybe Collector Road, and also Amy's Road, also Collector Road. That's quite busy, and many the trucks pass through. So cyclists or pedestrians sometimes, to take a bike or cross the street is high risk. But I remember when the community or people told me that I talked to the staff mentioned, this is not a high priority. We put into the kind of long-term plan, but maybe started from the 2016, 2017. So whether we put this paragraph in here, where higher priority or not, this is my concern.
So this is a bit about assessing when we have a new development. So if there was a new development popped up on Springs Road that generated a whole lot of pedestrian movements, then we have the ability to say to the developer, well, we think there should be a better crossing on Springs Road, and we can hopefully get them to pay for that improvement. The long-term plan and annual plan is more about what are the issues we're aware of now, and what is our program to deal with those. Of course, the developments pop up all over the place, and the long-term plan is we don't have ability in a forward sort of program to respond to every single development as soon as it comes through the door. So that sort of gives us the ability to say to the developer, well, there's the only issue here because of your development. You need to mitigate those effects by improving pedestrian safety. We'll deal with the problems that we already know about through the annual plan process, but this is a problem because of your development, because you're developing on Springs Road, for example. So it's...
concern is if a new subdivision is not directly, new street, new road in there, but surrounding area is existing road, but there's a new subdivision is in the nearby, whether the developer need to bear responsibility or not.
Yeah, so this will give us the ability to look at that and to assess whether the developer potentially needs to deal with that. It's part of the assessment. It'll be a case-by-case basis, and we can. It just gives us the ability to be able to look at that, and because if council had to deal with all these issues through rates, then obviously that would obviously have a funding implication with the annual plan. So it's about ensuring developers, if they're causing the effect, they mitigate them.
Can I come back to the joint officials paper in relation to the names again? So can you just give us the names? I mean, don't do it now, but give us the names of the streets in the CBD with their names that they've given them, and what the match is for the plan, and whether it would be sensible to have them the same.
Sure.
And the second one is the fact that some roads that are currently classified as collector and vice versa are actually acting as major and minor arterial roads and vice versa. Yeah. So some collector roads are actually being major or minor arterial because of the way that the traffic has redistributed post the earthquakes, and that's not to do with the number of road cones there are in a particular street at any one time, or how many roadworks are going on in the CBD all at once, but actually in relation to relocated offices, etc., etc. So, that road that runs, is it Whiteley Avenue, I mean, massive arterial now, but wasn't probably designed as one. So, and how we kind of cope with that in the district plan as well, because presumably once life goes back to some semblance of normality, then the status of the road will change. And maybe we need a mechanism in here to state what their actual function is at the moment, but then a simple mechanism for changing them over to the appropriate status when it in fact changes. But you don't have to do that right now. No. So just that might be quite a useful little note that could be done. Would that be right?
Yep.
Absolutely, we can do that. I was just checking with Brent though that you actually can't change anything in a district plan without a plan change. So there is no simple way to change something in a plan other than go through a plan change route.
Well, then why just bother having types of roads anyway then? I mean, let's not give them any names because they're going to change. That's the trouble. I mean, maybe you could create an additional classification which can essentially drop off when it's no longer required. Anyway, apply your planning brains to it. Brent's already proved to me that I can't think these things through when I think about who's actually covered by a district
This
plan.
time of the day we can.
You might come up with a clever idea, or you might just tell me that I'm wrong and it's not possible. But if it is possible, it seems to me that we could actually provide a plan that speaks to our present and future requirements in a way that doesn't require us to go through a major process.
We could potentially even have two classifications in the plan relating to particular dates or something like that.
Yep. All right. Anyway, so is that all you would like us to look at? You might have actually reached our capacity, but I'll allow one more question, or two more questions.
Sorry, Leanne, it's going back to the bicycle parking. We've got a page, page 30, 7.2 and H there. So there you've outlined what the conditions are, but in the last line, so if the building's up to the street and you've got no room for parking, then you've got they may be constructed in a position which most nearly complies with the 30-metre prerequisite. Now, I don't see why we have to have that differentiation. Why can't we just say that let's have cycle parking as close as possible to 30 metres from the nearest pedestrian entrance? Because then if someone wants to have a recessed frontage for a cafe, they can put the cycles as close to 30 metres as they can, but that doesn't have to be in their front park. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, so we've put this requirement in because we want to ensure that cycle parking, if it's provided, is in an accessible location. We've got numerous examples where people put cycle parking in, but it's round the back in a dark corner where you wouldn't want to go, let alone leave your bike there. And so we're trying to ensure that cycle parking is as close to the front entrance as possible. Obviously, as the issue before that Councillor East mentioned, if you've got no ability to put it within 30 metres of the front entrance, because your entrance is right on the footpath, right on the road, then we'll put it as close as possible. But
that was my point exactly.
I'm trying to address the fact that if you do have a setback because you're wanting to use that for your cafe tables or something, and then you have this obliges you to put your bicycle parks in there because they're to be no more than 30 metres from your entranceways. I'm trying to get around that so that a cafe is then able to have al fresco and not have to put their bikes in there. See what I mean?
But that was the whole point before, though. If you build a building, this is the whole case in this consent that I was sitting on a few months ago. If you build a building to the whole footprint, you don't have to provide any car parks and you don't have to provide any bike parks either. The minute you put a recess in, you do. And that was my whole point before.
It's a different issue than what I'm addressing, because actually the fact is that you have to provide cycle parking now, and this is the new proposal.
Only if you don't build to the entire footprint.
In the new proposal, you have to provide cycle parks, but you can, if you're building up to the street frontage, you can put them further than 30 metres away. The new still have to provide them. What I'm saying is, I want to remove that. I'm wondering if we could look at removing that they're no more than 30 metres if you're doing a recess, because it means that they may not be able to use that space as part of the business. So is there any way we can have some flexibility around that, do you think?
Well, I guess it depends on how you read that rule, because the second sentence talks about it needs to be within 30 metres of at least one main pedestrian public entrance. But your alfresco dining may not be right close to that public entrance. It may or it may not be. If it is, then I guess we'd have to look at it and we'd have to consider a restricted discretionary consent. But who's to say that every single alfresco piece of dining is going to be within 30 metres of, and it only says one main pedestrian entranceway. You know, if you look at Riccarton Mall, there's about 3 main entranceways into the mall?
I guess I'm applying this to perhaps, let's say you've got a street and someone wants to build a cafe, not in a mall but on the street.
Right.
Yeah. And so if there is the only main entrance is at the front and it's recessed off the street, they have to put the bike park in there. So I'm just looking for flexibility somehow, and I see your point, and we don't want the cycle parks stuffed away, but I'm just wondering if we can find some flexibility without triggering a resource consent, because that's time and money for people, isn't it?
Sure, we can look at that further. It's about the more exceptions you allow, obviously, the more people will use it to their advantage, and it will just weakens down the rule. So there is a balance between having a line in the sand and allowing flexibility. And through a consent process, people can have that flexibility, but we can look at it further.
But also, if you are looking at one shop, that's a requirement for how many cycle parks? One or two?
Depends on the size.
So it depends on the size. So there again, I mean, it's an understanding of all of the rules working together. If it's one or two car parks, it's not that
Anyway,
onerous.
we're going to wrap up. So one more question from Phil.
Just following that, but one other comment, just following that, just want to point out to councillors that cyclists certainly like being able to park our bikes close to the entrances, which is why it's there, which is good. Can I just ask you briefly perhaps to explain what's on page 16 briefly in terms of the minimum number of cycle parking facilities, how that might relate, say, to large buildings and that kind of thing, and how we can implement that? So this is on page 16, 7.3.4, minimum number of cycle parking facilities required.
So, page 16 are assessment matters that council can consider if people don't meet the minimum cycle parking requirements, which are on page 31 and through to 34. So if developments don't provide the minimum amount of cycle parkings cycle parks that they are required to do under page 31 to 34, then they will need to apply for consent, and it's the assessment matters on page 16 that are the factors that we will assess their consent against and decide whether it is appropriate for them to get approval for that or whether it should be declined because they need to provide the minimum.
Very good. All right. Raf, you're it.
May not
You're
be the right place to ask this, but really, rail, is this something that is going to be considered? Because, I mean, there's a couple of things here. One, I mean, obviously, big picture, considering we're planning for the next 10, 20 years, it would be silly not to think about rail. We have the tracks. We potentially have rolling stock from other areas of the country, which they don't want. Is this the right place to actually say we need to actually have a look at it, even at a very basic level? And secondly, even in terms of rail corridors and potentially making sure we've got the rail corridors, and I'm talking basically Rolleston, Amberley, in terms of the rail network, and obviously Littleton. Over the next, I mean, we have the technology now, but imagine in 10 years when we're looking at driverless cars, for example, again, all that requires is corridors. So when you talk about the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit in town, they've done the tests on driverless cars, which show that that's actually the speed that you can get a very free-flowing traffic network. Yeah. So I think to not consider these types of options now probably misses the opportunity, even if we're not going to put them in right this second.
This doesn't restrict or direct that rail should or shouldn't occur. It's probably not the right document for a direction on that. That's probably a decision that council would need to make, which sits outside of it. Okay. There's certainly a little bit of a CTSP provides a bit of a steer in that direction, and we are doing some work because there was a whole lot of work done for the Christchurch, the draft Christchurch Central Recovery Plan. We're trying to collate all that, bring it all together into something which is meaningful, and then our idea is that we'll report it back through to council But this doesn't, give a steer one way or the other as to whether rail's appropriate
It doesn't
or not.
matter.
It doesn't preclude it.
Sorry, one thing it does do though, and this answers part of your question, is that there's some pretty strong provisions in the proposed plan over reverse sensitivity along the transport corridors. So what that's about is making sure that you don't get highly sensitive activities, residential activity too close to the railway lines.
Yeah, good.
So that it's protecting those for the future if there is going to be more use.
Okay.
Very good. I think that's a big thank you, everyone, for the incredible effort that you've put into all of this and even answering my questions. There you go.
Great questions. Thank you very much.
But we really appreciate it and look forward to our next session next week.
On the 17th, yes.
Yeah, on the 17th.
Thank you.
Thank you.